You don't feel none of that. I wasn't on the ground out of it. I'm up like, and then when it was over, I realized this was all happening. And it was like, I had a big old scar, so all this was happening, and I'm like, damn, I gotta change.
Back then, the NBA was different. Back then, it was a league defined by toughness and grit, where only the bold survived. The atmosphere crackled with intensity, and the players were as fierce as the competition itself. It was a time when every game felt like a battle, and only the strongest emerged victorious. The 2000-2001 season was remembered for many things. The incredible finals run of Allen Iverson's Sixers with his crossover over Tyronn Lue.
9 in a row, 7 straight points by Iverson. Looked like he was dead in the water. The Sixers by 4, 40 seconds.
The second consecutive championship of Kobe and Shaq. There were several moments that will remain in the history books forever. Although the craziest situation of the season is one that often goes unnoticed. In the heart of the dead ball era, when the league was turned upside down and high-scoring superstars struggled to find their place, Paul Pierce stood out from the crowd. While others faded into the background, he carved his path, defying the odds and proving that true scoring talent could still shine, even in the most challenging of times.
Lead to 1. About only his 4th year, only Curry's 6th year.
Pierce going to back down, not taking tough fade away.
About size and strength, the ability to get guys on their heels, so he's getting to his spot and then elevates over the contestant.
Neither the fastest player nor the most athletic, number 34 of the Celtics had a superb ability to dominate games. He controlled the pace, set the rhythm of the offense, and scored the most difficult shots imaginable. But in that 2000-2001 season, Pierce was on the verge of not being able to do any of those things anymore. He was just a kid from Oakland, one who'd been a sensation since high school, carrying the weight of success on his shoulders like a badge. But off the court, he had a reputation for something else. He loved to party. For a lot of young people in California, hitting the clubs is just part of the lifestyle, a way to unwind. But for this 22-year-old, already on the fast track to NBA stardom and raking in millions, it was more than a habit. It was an escape, a way to ride the thrill of the night, knowing he had the spotlight on him no matter where he went. After being drafted 10th overall in the 1998 draft, Pierce exceeded all expectations. In his rookie year, he averaged 16.5 points, 6.4 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.7 steals, and 1 block per game, with a spectacular 44% shooting efficiency from the field and 41% in three-pointers. During his sophomore year in '99, he increased his scoring average to 19.5 points per night, a figure that in the dead ball era helped him to finish as the 23rd highest scorer of the season. For context, today he would have been 45th. But the point is that at the time, Paul was a menace, a real offensive menace. The Celtics, however, were still not the team they wanted to be. Those seasons, they failed to qualify for the playoffs. But for this young, hungry team with a rising star ready to burst onto the scene, this wasn't a problem, right? After all, in just 2 seasons, Paul had shown he was the real deal, igniting hope that he might be the one to lift Boston out of the shadows. They'd been stuck there for nearly a decade, lost since Larry Bird left the parquet. Now, Boston had a plan so solid it had to work. At least, that's what everyone thought. The nightmares of that night don't show up often, but when they do, they hit hard. "I keep my mind off it," Pierce said, "when I'm on the court. I never think about the incident. It's tough not to think about it or dream about it. I'm not gonna lie, I have. And I wake up and I see the different scars on my body. It's hard not to think about it." September 25th, 2000, Pierce was starting to embrace Boston. It was a world apart from Oakland, a city on the opposite coast with a vibe all its own. The nightlife wasn't as wild. The traditions were steeped in history, and the chill in the air was a stark contrast to California's sun-soaked weekends. But amidst this change, he was rising to idol status. Everyone knew Paul Pierce's name. Fame had its perks and its pitfalls. In Boston, he was a superstar, but with that spotlight came scrutiny. It was just another night at the Buzz Club, the well-known Boston nightclub buzzing with important faces and hidden stories. Paul was in his element, flirting, laughing, and soaking up the atmosphere. But then, he found himself locked in a conversation with a girl that stretched on just a little too long, drawing the attention of those around him. What started as playful banter began to feel like something more, a moment that could change everything. Whispers in the streets suggest she was the girl linked to Benzino, the Boston rapper infamous for his fiery feud with Eminem. Others claim she had ties to various gang clubs around the city, but none of that fazed Pierce. Or perhaps he simply wasn't aware of the storm brewing around her. Out of nowhere, a hard object struck him in the head, shattering into 1,000 pieces. In that chaotic moment, Paul was hit by a bottle, but it didn't stop there. Suddenly, he felt the sharp bite of 2 knives, one slicing into his neck, the other plunging into his chest and back. In total, Pierce endured 8 stab wounds, some dangerously close to vital organs. Just an inch higher or lower, and it could have been fatal. Luckily, none of those wounds claimed his life.
Blood everywhere. I'm kind of leaking down my face. I can really keep my eyes open. And they like, you stabbed. You need to go to the hospital.
Beside him that night was his teammate Antoine Walker, his partner in the mission to restore the Celtics to their former glory. Together, they carried the weight of a city's expectations on their shoulders. Antoine wasn't injured in the incident. He did, however, get robbed, and his take on the story is chilling. It happened between 30 and 45 seconds. 3 guys pointing guns at you, your life flashes in front of you. It bothered me for like a month straight. It really bothered me to where I always thought about it. That was the first time I actually ever had a gun pointed right at my chest, so it was kind of hard for me to deal with at first. Antoine Walker. Paul was rushed to the hospital, a whirlwind of medics and flashing lights. Surgeons worked swiftly to repair his lung, fighting to mend the damage. But as he lay there, dazed and disoriented, Pierce still hadn't grasped the full reality of what had just happened. In that moment, he was lost in the chaos, unaware that his life and career had just taken a staggering hit. It was a shock. I didn't realize how badly hurt I was until after the incident and the doctors told me what was going on, what happened to me. I didn't realize how much my life was in danger until after it was all over with. Paul Pierce. After that, something changed. His head didn't work the same way. Pierce became paranoid, had depression and anxiety attacks. He had the feeling that it could happen again at any time. And the Celtics were very concerned about the mental state of the player who was tasked to pull them out of the darkness. I couldn't be near crowds. If I got in a crowded place, I'd start shaking inside. It took me years to get over that. If I was walking and someone bumped into me or rubbed against me, I'd freak out. So now, I don't want to go anywhere. The police sat in front of my house for months. I was a mess. Paul Pierce.
Went outside, went inside, and it took some years for me to really start getting back to normal because it got to the point I get real anxious when I got in the crowd. I couldn't do the season tickets holder stuff with the crowd of people, appearances I wasn't doing. So, but the thing that helped me the most was when I started talking about it to other people.
The whispers were everywhere. His career was hanging by a thread. Many doubted he'd even see the court that season, convinced that this incident had rattled him too deeply to bounce back quickly. They said Pierce would need time to regain the ironclad mindset of an elite athlete. But Pierce had other plans. The Celtics were playing their home opener against the Pistons, and to everyone's surprise, less than 2 months after nearly being murdered, Pierce came to the game to dominate, and he did. With a 28-point, 6-rebound, 5-assist, 2-steal performance, number 34 showed that his ability to bounce back and exceed expectations was unmatched. Pierce didn't just come back early, he came back better than ever. He returned with a fire and skill no one had ever seen before. Somehow, after enduring 8 stab wounds, he rose to a new level transforming himself into one of the NBA's elite. In that 2000-2001 season, the Celtics star put up staggering numbers: 25.3 points, 6.4 rebounds, 3.1 assists, and 7.1 steals per game. It was one of the finest performances of his career. But for Pierce, this was only the beginning. Paul went on to build a legacy that few could rival. A 10-time All-Star, a player who earned MVP votes in 5 different seasons, and a 5-time All-NBA selection. Season after season, he proved that his talent and grit were undeniable, cementing his place among basketball's elite. His crowning moment came in 2008 when he was named Finals MVP, leading a stacked Celtics roster to the NBA championship. Even if other stars like Ray Allen or Kevin Garnett joined Boston to achieve their goal, Pierce never stopped being the soul of that team. After enduring an ordeal that would have broken even the toughest athletes, the Celtics forward made a decision. This setback wouldn't stop him. In his mind, he was still on the path to greatness, a future Hall of Famer, no matter the cost. We'll never forget the small forward who, despite being slow by NBA standards, cracked the league's top 15 time and again. We'll never forget his mastery in the low post, where he turned footwork into an art form. And we'll never forget that iconic shooting stroke, smooth, lethal, and unmistakably his. But above all, we'll never forget those clutch baskets he sank when it mattered most. Because if there's one undeniable truth, it's that Paul Pierce was indeed the truth.
Game on the line. Did you call bank? I called game.
Few players possessed his killer instinct, and even fewer could stand toe-to-toe with the scoring giants of his era like Kobe and LeBron. When the stakes were highest, Pierce didn't just rise to the occasion, he owned it. With a career total of 26,397 points, Paul Pierce etched his name in NBA history as one of the league's most lethal superstars. And we'll never forget how he overcame a critical situation to claim that title.